Hi, and welcome to FTD Talk. My name is John James, and I am writer and campaigner for male victims of female perpetrated domestic violence. This week, we talk to Steve, who is going to tell us about his abuse and his experiences in family court. This is his story. So, welcome to FTD Talk, Steve. And the first question I'd like to ask you is, could you tell me how you and your partner met?
Yeah, sure. We met online, actually, on a online dating site, because that's the done thing, I guess, at the time, and it just sort of blossomed from there, really. That's about it. It's hard to describe it, but it seemed pretty normal at first, pretty standard. The only real relationship I'd had before that was with my son's mum, my ex-wife. We were together for like 12 years or something, so a long time, and we just sort of grew apart. Ended up divorcing. I was single for about 4 years, and then I just met her on a online dating site, and that was it. We just started spending time together.
And how did she make you feel at that time?
It was actually, I remember at the start, it was just funny. I'm a pretty funny guy anyway, hopefully. But we just sort of, it was a bit odd and a bit bizarre, but I'm quite comfortable with that because it sort of goes with the profession that I do. So I was all right with it, and I was just having a laugh. I just went for a bit of fun, just for have a chit chat. It wasn't serious or anything like that. So I remember it being quite awkward, but quite funny. That's what I remember. The first time, and that was it. We just carried on. We just carried on spending time together, pretty much.
And when did you realise that something wasn't quite right?
Oh, quite quick, believe it or not. And looking back, I wish I'd have taken notice of. They call them red flags, don't they? I wish I'd taken notice of the red flags now, but obviously I didn't. I'd say within the first month, easily. I mean, there were some very odd things starting to happen. For example, like I'd go to work and I'd be on dinner with a friend from work, and I'd get a text message trying to dump me, and I'd just look at my mate and I'd show him the text and just start laughing because I was just like, that's just bizarre. I was there last night. We were having a laugh. Do you know what I mean? It was just really odd. So that for me was the big indicator at first that she literally just tried to dump me every week, probably It was more intense at first, and then after a while it just sort of didn't die out completely, but it got a bit less.
What was it? Just strange, or was it nasty? Was there an argument involved, or?
No, not at first. It was more of it's hard to describe because I actually just started laughing. I mean, I'll give you a literal example. So the first few times we met up, it was just a laugh. I was just having a bit of fun and just having a laugh. And I don't mean fun as in, and I don't mean sort of like intimate fun. I just mean having a joke around, just playing around, being a bit of a joker. And I remember going over and we just sort of started chatting. And we just got on like a house on fire. We'd bang some music on. We'd have a couple of glasses of wine, some cheese, and we just joked. We just had a laugh. And this example in question, I remember when I was at work getting some dinner, and I remember saying to my mate, I was just laughing because she tried to dump me. And I said, oh, well, hey ho, you can't win them all. And I actually bought some cheese and some wine and some flowers. And I went round that night and I just said, look, it's all right. It doesn't matter. If you don't want to continue, that's fine. But I thought I'd replace your wine and your cheese, and I got you some flowers, and that was it. Honestly, and we just went inside and just carried on drinking and just having a laugh, and then just carried on from there. It was just bizarre. It was really bizarre.
And when did it escalate? When did you realise, my God, this is abuse?
Do you know what? That's a tough question for me to answer because I don't think during the relationship that I actually realised there was some strange things. For example, like I used to ask her how many relationships, the default questions you ask everybody. Never really got an answer. I think the longest relationship she admitted to having was, I think it's about 14 months. And that wasn't a standard relationship. That was a married guy. So it was like an affair. And I was like, okay, that's a bit odd. But again, I'm not judgmental. I was like, she was like, oh, well, I was young and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, fair enough, everybody makes mistakes sort of thing. And I think it was probably about 3 months into the relationship when it seemed to sort of crescendo. I don't mean the abuse. I just meant there was it's like an elephant in the room sort of scenario, because there was something that she had to tell me, and it was like a big reveal, which to me, looking back, I just thought, this is just really odd, but let's just go with it. And it was this big reveal about how she'd been abused loads, and the stories. Looking back now, I can't even believe that I believed them. So I think one of them was she'd gone for some counselling. I'm still not sure why. With a female counsellor, and this counsellor had abused her position and ended up luring her into a lesbian relationship. And I'm like, looking back now, how I've been treated after the relationship, it's quite obvious to me that there's something more sinister afoot, because I've been treated in exactly the same way, and I literally have done absolutely nothing wrong. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So. And there's more than that. I mean, I could go on probably for a good sort of 10, 15 minutes about all these people, and I just look back now and I think, I just think when I met her, she was 37. So she's obviously just wanting to have a child. And obviously nobody wants to have a child with her, which again, should have been a bit of a warning sign, but you just go with it, don't you? You just, nice people and all that. But anyway, so so a big thing for me was, looking at her age and thinking, nobody's really stuck out. Nobody's really sort of stuck with her for a long period of time. And I think I ended up staying with her for 3 years. I don't think during that, I started getting a little bit dismissive. Like, well, the worst bit for me was, I think it's like every 4 to 5 weeks during the relationship, she'd just sort of say horrible things. I mean, people describe it as narcissistic rage, but I wouldn't have described it as rage. But she used to say some horrible stuff like, I don't love you, I've never loved you, and all this sort of stuff. And then she'd just go, like she would literally just go out the door, and she'd just disappear for. Sometimes it was like an hour or two. Sometimes it was overnight. She did it while she was pregnant. She did it after little one were born. It didn't matter to her. Do you know what I mean? And she did that for about 3 years. And I just got to the point where I was like, I've had enough. I just thought you need to get to a point where you need to figure out what that stuff is. And I mean, it's not even that we didn't, because I think we went to 3 counsellors while we were together to try and get her some help. There were 2 Relate counsellors and an NLP counsellor. And I don't know if you know about different types of therapy, but I was just trying to do everything I could to get her some help. She described it at first as commitment phobia. Now, at the time, I was like, I don't know what this stuff is. I didn't do any psychology or any of this sort of stuff. But I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. Let's get you some books, because I was big into self-help stuff. Because I'd done some sort of codependency work before, like years before. So I bought her a book on commitment phobia, body dysmorphia, all these little topics that she seemed to, not really fit into per se, but I just thought there's more going on here than just one little thing. Anyway, and I remember reading it. I think I read it twice, this commitment phobia book, and she started reading it once, and she was like, wow. I said, what? She goes, it's like someone's written a book about my life. And I was just like, wow, that's insane. Well, good, keep reading it, hopefully it'll do you some good. But again, like I said, nothing really changed. I just got more and more fed up during the relationship. And And again, you'll hear the phrase "walking on eggshells." That was all I was doing for 3 years, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, it seems as if you still had your head screwed on. You didn't really get inside your head. So why did you stay? Why didn't you just pack up and leave?
Oh, yeah, I think probably given off the wrong idea. When we were together, my head wasn't screwed on at all. I had no idea what was going off. It was after she left. And she'll tell you, if anybody talks to her, she'll go, "Oh yeah, I left. He was getting abusive and he was doing this and that and whatever." Basically, like most guys do, I was getting fed up. I was starting to lose all respect for her because she just carried on abusing, and the behaviour never changed. And it wasn't. This is the scary thing for me. It wasn't physical abuse, and I never thought that I'd be on the receiving end of non-physical domestic abuse from a woman. Because, and I say this to so many people, I'd easily fight her. Do you know what I mean? If we were side by side, the physicality is not an issue. It's like, but it's hard to describe to somebody how somebody can abuse you just by being in a relationship with you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the hard thing to get across. So I think the worst part of it was the gaslighting. So how can I describe it? So what she used to, well, she is a therapist, which is quite scary for me. So
yeah.
I know. So, I mean, before that, she was a social worker, and then before that, she was a journalist. So when I look back at the career, I think that's the worst combination of somebody who would want skills to be able to manipulate people, because you've got words, you've got kids, and then you've got adults. It's like, wow, that's pretty scary. Anyway, so I think it was the gaslighting. So she used to sort of go around being really sort of overtly flirtatious with people, and then she'd sort of spin around and make out like I was jealous. And I'm like, and then afterwards, it just sort of dawned on me one time. She sort of tried to make out that I was, abusive and that I was an alcoholic and all this sort of stuff. And in the end, it just popped into my head one day. The abuse was so bad, I ended up going to AA for a while because I thought it was me. Do you know what I mean? I thought it was me who was the abuser. And my sponsor just said to me one day, I don't know why it stuck in my head, but I went for a cup of tea and I was in bits, absolutely in bits. And he was like, he says, sometimes with us, it's external things. And I didn't think of it at the time. I just had a cup of tea and a chat with him afterwards. And I think it was the day after or a couple of days later, I just had a massive light bulb and I went, wow, it's not me. And that for me was like a big wake up call. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it. It's not me. Do you know what I mean? And since then, I've just sort of absorbed anything I can to, like reading stuff like psychology and self-help stuff. And to be fair, I was actually reading all that sort of stuff to try and figure out what was wrong with me. But I kind of inadvertently figured out, what's happened to me and, what can happen to other people as a part of that. So I guess that's probably what happened for me. And that was about 9 months after she left. So she used to come back and she'd come around and we'd play fight and it was like we'd just met. It was just bizarre. But I couldn't carry on with the roller coaster. It was like a freight train. I just wanted to get off all the time. You know what I mean? It's just messing with my head, just up and down all the time. So she left and she was like, I can't live like this anymore. She fabricated some sort of an argument. And I was just, like sat just trying to chill out, listen to some music and stuff. And I said, well, just get your stuff and go. And she literally did. And she took my daughter, or our daughter. And I think it was about 9 months. I think it's about after I went little and was 9 months old. So, and again, it's no coincidence, but she just started to sleep through the night. It's like, the more I look back, the more I see things and go, right, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I know that you ended up in family court.
Yeah.
And I mean, my own situation, I don't know anything about family court personally, and I know that some of our audience wouldn't know about family court. So could you just explain what is the function of family court?
Right, okay, I'll give you the official explanation because it doesn't really work this way. But first of all, forget what you've seen on TV. It's absolutely nothing like what TV's like. It's basically just a big room where people go and sit down, and it's the children act basically. So that's what you're supposed to go. I mean, I had to go because she was basically just messing me around with contact after she left. Yeah. And I'll probably sit here and tell you stories of what happened over about a year. For like, I think the what is it? The straw that broke the camel's back for me was she'd basically just unilaterally dictated all my contact to me. Right, I used to go every weekend, and then all of a sudden she'd just take half a day off me. And the worst one was I travelled down. It's like 50 miles away from here. I travelled down in rush hour one Wednesday, and I think I had an hour in the back of the car with my daughter, just because she said so. And I'm like, this has to stop. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I can't continue. You know, I can't have a decent relationship with my daughter. So I didn't have a choice. And I just went to family court. And then there's so basically, I was supposed to go to court to get a court order, so that she would be forced to allow me contact with my daughter. It's almost like a last resort. I didn't want to have to do it, but I didn't have a choice. Yeah. It's either don't see my daughter or go to family court. So I ended up going to family court, and this was 3 years ago now. And if you want me to describe it, it's like the Wild West. I'll be honest with you. It's unbelievable. For women, for female abusers, it is like a walk in the park. I mean, she can go into family court and say just about anything she likes, and she will be blindly believed. And I'm talking without any evidence whatsoever. She'll just be believed. So my experience of family court so far is I goes in to get a court order. I asked for 50-50. I end up with every other weekend. A Wednesday afternoon every week, and half of all the holidays. Yeah, which it's not a lot, but it's better than nothing, I guess. And again, this is what you end up finding with family court. It's massively biased towards women. So I think women get, what is it, like 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10? They basically just get what they want, pretty much. So that was the first court order that was written 3 years ago, and for a start, it's biased, yeah? So for a start, she's got Littleton's passport. So if I want to arrange to go on holiday, and she wants to arrange to go on holiday, she does what she likes. I have to request the passport. I have to give her the flight dates and times and an alternative contact number. So even right from the off, it's like, you almost treated like a criminal straight away. It's like, hang on, how's that work?
Does she not have to do the same to you?
No. She just does what she wants. This is my point, and then that's the starting point for the court order. Yeah. So again, it's massively biased towards her. As God forbid she get anxious or whatever, but that's what you get. Anyway, so that happened. Her legal person, who I'm not going to name and shame, but I'd love to, who's also lied in court or reported to the authorities that don't actually do anything about it because they just don't. She's then gone. It's called the silver bullet. So my ex has gone to Women's Aid. Women's Aid have called me a perpetrator. This is bearing in mind, there's no evidence of anything, right? Because nothing's actually happened. In fact, if anything, right, I've got more evidence of her being domestically abusive towards me than the opposite way around. Yeah, there isn't any, basically, because I haven't been abusive. And I think I've got a lot. I probably got about a good few hundred pages of stuff. Anyway, so she goes to Women's Aid. Women's Aid then go, right, let's get you into family court. Let's get you a non-molestation order. Now, I didn't know anything about this before I went into family court. And I'm thinking, what? Why would you want one of those? That's a bit, I don't get that, but whatever. Because at this point, I'm thinking, I've got my contact. I'll just carry on. Let's just crack on. So she goes into family court with another Women's Aid worker. So she I think she basically printed out the book that I got her about commitment phobia. She's printed all that out and put that in as some sort of evidence, right? And she's also presented a text message from me to her, and it was basically me offering her to put her on healthcare so she could get some free counselling again. Well, yeah. So she used that evidence, even though it's not really evidence of what molestation or whatever you want to call it, or harassment. She's used that to get a non-molestation order against me. We then go back to court for the final court order to be done and finalised and printed out, and we abide by that. That night, I tell her, look, at dinner time when we went to court, this other women's aid worker, we're walking out on dinner because it took most of the day, because you just wait around for a while, for a long time. And I walked out behind them, and she sort of turned around and smiled at me, and I'm like, I didn't even know who it was. Anyway, my ex-girlfriend tells her, oh, that's him. And she turned around and started like being verbally abusive, and I just started laughing. I was like, you don't even know me. You do not even know me. And not only do you not know me, we're at family court, breaking for dinner so I can go and get some food, and you're turning around and verbally abusing me for what reason? Honestly, it's unbelievable. Women's aid need to be completely kept out of family courts, regardless, absolutely regardless. And I've even got more stuff. So I just left it at this point. I'm thinking, I don't care. I don't really want to text her. I don't. I'm not. It's not a big deal for me. So I just went, whatever. Yeah, just give her a non-mol. I don't really care. Anyway, I inadvertently texted her on the final court order date. And I basically sent her a text pleading to co-parent with her. And I actually got prosecuted for that. Believe it or not.
You got prosecuted for that?
Yes. I got prosecuted for sending a text saying, drop the non-mol and let's co-parent our daughter because it's what's best for her. Basically said that, roughly. I mean, there were a bit more to it. Yeah. Of like, you got what you wanted, you got every other weekend and all. I've got every other weekend and stuff. But that's essentially the crux of the message. Yeah, and the police doggedly hunted me down. Yeah, I had to go in multiple times and check this out. So every time I've been interviewed by the police, I've told them I'm the victim. Yeah. And they just completely ignored me. And not only did I tell them I was the victim, I showed them all my evidence on my cloud drive. I was like, look, there's loads of evidence here. She's the perpetrator. It's not the other way around. She is. Look, have a look. And honestly, I was sat in the police station, voluntary interview, showing them on my cloud drive all this evidence. Just completely ignored it. Honestly, I've never known it. I've never experienced anything like it. Honestly. Anyway, so that happened. I got my contact order. I had my contact because at the end of the day, that's all I was really bothered about. And I didn't say anything. I didn't say, look, she's a female perpetrator. She's done this, that, and that. I thought I'll just leave it and just see what happens. I'm just going to leave it. So contact started to go ahead, and I'm just trying to remember. Oh, that's right, yeah. So this is what I think has happened. Obviously, I can't prove it, but I'm like 80, 90% sure this is what's happened. So I suspect my ex has got some sort of mental health problem, and while I have contact, she's getting anxious and she's transferring that onto Littlin, because when I had Littlin one time on a weekend, she was sick 21 times. Yeah, from I think it was Saturday afternoon until Sunday tea time when I got her. She was sick, and kids can't tell you they're anxious. They just get sick. And they'll tell you, oh, I've got a poorly tummy, or I've got, this or that. Anyway, so I texted her to the hospital because she wouldn't eat or drink anything and keep it down. She just kept sicking it back up. So I'm in A&E, and I obviously can't contact my ex because she's got a non-molestation order against me, and I'll get arrested. So I go and I just try and get us to drink some water and stuff. And eventually she seems to sort of come around a bit. And I said, look, it's getting late. It's getting on for like sort of 8, 9 o'clock. What I might do is I might take her home, because I've done a Sunday chicken for Sunday dinner. I said, I'll take her home and try with a bit of plain chicken and some water, and hopefully she can get some sleep. Might be because we're in the hospital that she's not keeping water down. I said, she has had a bit of water, so I'm not, overly concerned. Anyway, I did a test on her and stuff. Walked back to the car. And obviously, I got him to contact her mum because I can't. She comes straight out and just walked back to the car with me. And then I said to her, look, got to take her back. You can come and have a cup of tea and put her to bed if you want a bit of comfort, sort of thing. And she just sort of muttered something and buggered off. Anyway, the morning after, got her up, and she had a bag of crisps. She didn't want anything to eat. She left her breakfast. So I had to take her back like 50 miles. So I drives down, and I could tell she wasn't herself in the car. And Gets there, opens the car door, little and sick all over herself. And I'm like, oh God, she's still not well. Need to take her back to the hospital. Now, at this point, my ex-partner's involved a third party who, unsurprisingly to me, is a church minister. So he's whiter than white. He makes her look great because he would never lie. He's a man of God. Anyway, so he opens the front door. I know, you can't make it up. He opens the front door, and I'm pointing at my little and going, look, she's just been sick on herself. We need to go, we need to take her back to the hospital. He said something about you can't see my ex or whatever. I said, all right, fair enough. And I just got back in my car, put her back in the car. And I went to leave, and she comes running out of her home, basically grabs the little one out of the car, all histrionic, keyword, histrionic. And I'm like, what are you doing? She's just been sick. And I took her back off her, put her back in the car. And she just stood in my way. She wouldn't let me go. She physically just stood in my way. So I've gone to sort of guide her out of the way of the car, and she's pretended to be assaulted. I mean, literally, she just stood in front of me going, ah! And I laughed at her, and I went, what are you doing there? Because she basically faked an assault. Now, if there's anything I can give to the guys out there, this is so common by female perps. It's called the ambush. There's a name for it. And I didn't know this until I found it on a Scottish domestic abuse draft bill, and I read it and went, wow, that's unreal, because that's just happened to me. So again, this is, and I tell guys this as well, get a camera, get your phone out, get it recorded, because if you don't, they'll be believed, whether it's true or not, they'll be believed. So basically I were then wanted for common assault. I mean, I'll try and cut it short because I could go on forever. Goes to court, she tries to get more charges added on the day by bypassing due process. Honestly, it's an insane story. Long story short, she's now breached 2 court orders. I've missed two of my daughter's birthdays, 2 Christmases. She's not seen her brother or her dad now for 7 months, I think it is. So, and we're back in court again. God knows when. It's supposed to be tomorrow, actually, but there's not enough judges and all that sort of stuff. So that's family court for you. It's an awesome place to be. And I haven't even mentioned the money. I've lost count. I've probably spent 40, 50K easy. And I'm still spending, so.
And she's still winning every time she goes in?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'll tell you what I did forget to mention. The women's aid worker, not the one that verbally abused me at court, one of the, I think it was her boss actually. She rang up my support worker, because I had a counsellor at this point, helping me talk through stuff, who's been fantastic, by the way. So shout out to male domestic abuse services that give it for free as well. By the way, these people aren't funded; they just do it off their own backs. So she left a message, which had got private law details on a voicemail. So she's obviously gone around, and this is contempt of court. If you read the court order, you're not allowed to divulge any of these proceedings to anybody. But she's basically told teachers at school, she's told all of her old friends who've not spoken to me. Again, she's just going around telling everybody stuff about private court stuff. So when I found out about leaving a voicemail, I Googled her and I had a look on Facebook. And I found her with a T-shirt on which said, "The future is female," which I thought were a great motto for a women's aid worker. I then found she got an Instagram. I think she got an Instagram account as well, where she was getting drunk in Magaluf. Is it Magaluf? I can't remember. It's called Magaluf. Yeah. That's the place, yeah. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah, fair enough. So I'm a bit dubious, to be honest, about women's aid. Let's just say that. I've complained. Nothing's happened. I've reported, and again, I've been reporting all this to the police for the past 3+ years. Nothing happens. So it's quite sad.
Well, if you go onto the women's aid site, it actually says that domestic abuse is a gendered crime.
Yeah.
So I can believe that.
Well, do you know what, right? It's domestic abuse, in my opinion, it can happen to anybody. So it's by its nature, I don't think it is gendered. But what I do believe is it needs to be a different gendered response to domestic abuse. I do think we need male services and we need female services, because female perps aren't going to, I mean, some of them will punch you and stab you and stuff, but then these are easy for the police to lock up because there's a stab wound. Do you know what I mean? But it's basically the the sort of pathological narcissist that, for me, that that are very manipulative, that'll go straight to victim status. And this is me describing my ex. I'm feeling abused, always. And basically what's happened is I probably sent her a few texts in the last 3 years. This is not harassment. This is not abuse. This is somebody, gaming the system. And it's very, very easy to game the system when you're a woman. Very easy to game it. So,
what do you think needs to happen then? Because psychological and emotional abuse is very, very difficult to prove. So how would you think that needs to change?
I think we need to start listening to patterns. I mean, part of my job is patterns and pattern recognition. I mean, the stuff that I've learned psychology-wise, and I think's helped, because that's pretty much helped. It's given me the knowledge of people's behaviours, so I've started to see patterns in behaviours. So, for example, non-violent female perps do not behave the same as violent ones, and I would imagine it's the same for guys, or a similar, a similar sort of. So I think it's, start to listen. It's not difficult. Just go out there and just ask somebody. I mean, if you think someone's being abused, or they're in a toxic relationship or whatever, just go and ask them. Just hold out your hand and just talk to people. Just listen. Just get a body of evidence and start. I mean, like that domestic abuse draft bill for Scotland. When I read that, I was like, oh my God, wow, because I was reading exactly what had happened to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, fabricated an event at hand, and it said that in the text. They fabricate an event at handover. I was like, oh my God. And eventually I think I saw an article with loads of bullet points. And I actually sent this to my solicitor the other day. I filled that in and I've highlighted every single one of them but two, which I think one is for sexual abuse and the other one is for, I think it's financial abuse or something like that. So every single one she'd done, apart from, the two extreme ones, which obviously the police would have to get involved with. But yeah, it's just listening to people, especially men. I mean, I do honestly think, there's not enough. I think there's a lot of crap going around as well. I mean, it's almost become trendy now to slag off, white men, and that's so wrong in so many ways. It needs to change. That whole narrative of slagging men off is just wrong. Because I'll be honest with you, there's not many men that I know that I would say are toxic or bad. Do you get what I mean? But it's almost like that script's been flipped, and it's like, well, hang on, how did that happen all of a sudden? I don't believe it. I just don't. Do you know what I mean? So, and I think we need. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think we need separate services. Simple as that. We need separate services for men. And when I say men, I don't just mean I mean like trans men, gay men. I've got a friend who was going to set up a counselling service with who's gay. And he's the first one to say there's loads of it. It's there's loads of men out there getting totally abused left, right, and centre, and they're just not believed. I mean, I think that's the big problem. I think is the stats that are being used. I think they're being manipulated up front by the police, and I know that for sure now, because I've spent 3 years trying to report it, and every single time I go to report it, I can tell what technique they're using on me to either deflect, displace. There's all these different ego defense mechanisms that you can use, and I'm just sat there going, so hang on then, officer, you want me to find some evidence of abuse that never happened? How am I going to do that? I'd love for you to tell me how I'm, because what, do you want me to invent something that doesn't exist? It's just it gets to the point where it is like a comedy, and you get another one going, well, you've just been in a toxic relationship, mate. It happens to the best of us. I'm like, what? That's not, no. Because if I was a female, you'd be taking a report. You'd be getting you'd be getting someone else involved, and it would be escalating it, and that's just wrong. It really is. I feel for men. I really do. I really, really do.
And how do you think that family court can change to improve things for men?
Well, they need to get rid of women's aid completely. Honestly, in my experience, that's the worst thing that could have happened. Another thing as well, and there's a lot of, I think it's the old president that was quoted as saying, because non-molestation orders are criminal consequences, the burden of proof needs to be a bit better than, oh, it's probable. In other words, I think it's like 50.1%. It's probably happened. It's like, no, that's not good enough, because men are literally getting prosecuted based on hearsay, and that's just not good enough. Mm-hmm. And do you know what? It's not even just that. It's the impact on men and their children, because they're just, I mean, the thing is as well, and I say this to so many people, what's the number one reason for men's existence? Their kids. Yeah. Take away that reason, and what have you got? You've got a man with no reason to live. And that's not good. And that's not good, you know. And there's a reason why the suicides are getting worse and worse year on year. And that's, I think, a big part of it. We need to just stop straight away. I mean, another big indicator, one thing they could do right now, start enforcing family court order breaches. Get rid of Kafkas. All Kafkas have done in my case is give her an excuse to breach court orders. Every time I get a report, they'll go, yeah, that was reasonable for her to do it. They don't mention the impact on the child, which actually they're supposed to be there to, guardian. They're supposed to be like, hang on, she stopped contact there, but it was reasonable. That's all they're there for. They're just there to give women a reason to breach and not pay any consequences. Whereas if it's the other way around, guy gets locked up straight away. Boom, coppers, you in court. It's so wrong, honestly. Yeah. How they're treated is so completely opposite. Women almost get compassion and, oh no, oh well, she might have an anxiety problem, or oh, she might have a personality disorder, or let's be kind to her. Why? Because she's a woman. Men, nah, just get them sent down. Don't even enter into a conversation. It's just so wrong. I just can't believe that in this day and age, in 2020, men are still being treated like criminals. When actually, all you've got in family court is men wanting a relationship with their son or their daughter, or it's just so wrong. It's the crime of our time, I think. And it's been going on for God knows how long.
Do you think that women's aid hold a lot of sway in court then?
Well, do you know what? No, not in my circumstances. But what they have done is they've gone from, well, they've actually meddled in court is what they've done. They've assumed I'm a perpetrator based on zero evidence. And this, for me, needs to be improved 100%, because I'd love to go to that women's aid and go, well, what were where's the test? What test did you put in place before you advised her to get a non-molestation order or whatever? Because I guarantee you there won't have been one. And that's the problem. Do you know what I mean? That is the actual problem. I mean, the thing is as well, I goes for one locally to me here, and I had I think it's like 320 something pages of evidence in my court documents. And the judge didn't give me one. She's got one text and some photocopies. Yeah, I've got all this evidence. Yeah, I mean, I literally got pages and pages, reams of stuff. And he goes, oh, this needs to be in your family court documents. And I'm like, well, just give me a non-mol. Because if you give me a non-mol, I can then ring the police and she gets prosecuted. But this is the thing. God forbid we start prosecuting women. That's the problem. That's the actual problem. They don't want to be seen to prosecuting women. They give women compassion to give men jail. It needs to change. That we're all human here. The only people that lose out are the children. It's family court. It's supposed to be about kids. That's the actual issue. It's not about kids. It's about legal people lengthening out proceedings so they get paid more, or getting a non-mol so they get legal aid, or getting a domestic abuse certificate off Women's Aid or whatever, or a letter or whatever, so they can then get legal aid. It's just wrong. The whole thing is just a mess.
That's without upheaval of the whole system. It doesn't seem like there's much joy for men in the future.
No, I completely agree. I can't see. Like I said, the single biggest thing they can do is start enforcing court orders. I mean, there's only one reason why a court order is in place in the first place, and that's to be followed. It's as simple as that. You know, if you breach a court order, there should be some consequence, and they've got it written on them. There's always a penal notice. They just ignore it because Kafkas go, well, it was reasonable. It's like, no, it doesn't matter whether it's reasonable. That's a court order. And this is the problem. In any other bit of law, you know, a guy breaches an order, boom, he's straight up in front of a judge.
Yeah.
You know, it's the only other area that where they just, well, it's infantilization is what it is. They're not held responsible for their actions. That's the actual problem. They need to start saying, look, there's a court order here. If you breach it, whatever it says on there is going to happen to you. But then they use the whole, oh, well, they've got a child. So the consequences wouldn't just be on her, it'd be on the child as well. So, you know, if they just need to start enforcing court orders, it's that simple. I think it's something like less than 2% of court orders are enforced. That's ridiculous. I mean, if that was a business, you know, you wouldn't be paying. It'd have gone out of business years ago.
Yeah,
and we are literally paying for these as well. You know, they're not free. It's cost thousands and thousands of pounds. They're not free. You know, it's expensive. It's just ridiculous.
Well, you say that when it was only after you left the relationship that you realised that what you went through was abuse.
Yeah.
Did you tell anybody else, like friends or family, about the abuse? And if so, what did they think?
Oh God, yeah. This is just more grief, to be fair. So, well, what happened was when we were together for 3 years. She worked for 6 months, and then she was claiming she was being harassed by a boss or a boss's boss. And I said, look, you know, we don't need loads of money, so just stop doing what you're doing if it's having that much of an impact. Because it was having an impact on me.
Yeah.
You know, like she'd get home and she'd just start, you know, kicking off and stuff. And I'd be like, look, chill out, eat your tea, tea's there, run a bath, you know, and then we'll chat about it and stuff. And it got to the point where I was like, look, it's just not worth this much hassle, you know. And again, at the time, I didn't know anything. I just thought it was her being harassed at work, you know. Anyway, so I just carried on. I just carried on completely blindly. After she finished working, she filled her time with just basically going around and visiting people. And some of those people were my mum and my sister, and some of my friends. So that's where the isolation kicked in. So what happened when it all went wrong was she'd basically spent quite a lot of time with my mum and my sisters and my sort of friends and family. And what they didn't realise was what was happening in the background that I wasn't telling them. So, like at times, I used to pull up outside my sister's house, and I'd just sit in the car and just start crying because I knew if I told my sister anything, and we were really close at one point, but I knew if I told her anything, my ex would pick up on it through her speech because she's got a bit of a gift for really sort of overanalyzing people's speech. Do you know what I mean? And she can pick up on like the slightest odd word of, oh, it's a guy, is it? You know, you can't have like a normal conversation with her because she's almost, you know, sort of obsessively listening to it. So, and I could tell this because I'd had a conversation with my sister at one point, and when I got home, I got grilled about that, and I basically got told off, like, oh, what are you telling her that for? You know, and I'm like, well, it's my sister. You know, we're really close. I tell my sister everything. Obviously not, you know, intimate stuff, but you know, there's certain things that, you know, I'm comfortable to tell my sister about. So eventually I learned to not talk to my sister. I wanted to, obviously, but I didn't. And it was the same with my mum. And it got to the point where I just couldn't talk to him anymore. And after it all broke up, broke down, should I say, I tried to go around for some support, and it just didn't work. And I think it's because I'd figured out all this sort of psychology stuff, you know, all like these toxic, you know, like people are controlling or you know, I'd figured all that sort of stuff out. So I'm not the same person that I used to be. I don't put up with any toxicity at all anymore. Even if people are trying to control a conversation, I'll say, look, I'm sorry, but I'm not that bothered. You know, I don't really want to carry on the conversation. Do you get what I mean? I won't be rude or nasty or anything, but it's easy to it's like a second nature thing now. I can almost figure people out straight away. And my sisters are like that. They've both been traumatized by our parents splitting up when I was younger, obviously. So yeah, so there's quite a lot of trauma in our family, historical trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of me learning all this stuff, I'd gone back and looked at myself, and I'd also gone back and looked at my family dynamics. And I'd also figured out that my ex-partner was just like my mother, and my ex-wife was just like my mother. So when you start to realize, holy shit, it's a bit Freudian. Do you know what I mean? It's like, wow. So
Yeah.
I've been attracted to women subconsciously that are just like my mother. Wow, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, that's just insane. But yeah, the problem with that as well is that I'm now isolated from my sisters because I can't have a relationship, a normal, healthy relationship with them because they don't realize how toxic they are because of it. Do you know what I mean? Like my mum used to paint my younger sister. You'll hear these phrases: golden child. My eldest sister was the black sheep because everything that went wrong was her fault. And again, the reason for that is because my eldest sister's got a different father to me and my younger sister. And my younger sister was always subservient. So the younger sister got, oh, she's the golden child because she always does as she's told. And you'll start to realize these messed up family dynamics. And I've also realized that, that's part of the problem. Me being attracted to these types of people was part of the problem. But yeah, so I don't really speak to, I mean, my mum sadly died around Halloween last year, and we all had to come back together, which was nice because it was, we didn't really say anything, it went really well. And it was nice to see my sisters and hug them and stuff. But again, I distinctly remember a conversation where my sister, I could tell on the phone that my sister just wanted an argument. And I just called her out. I said, look, I can tell from your voice. You're angry. You just wanted an argument, and I don't want to argue with you. So unless you're going to spit it out and we're going to have a conversation, then I don't know what you've called for. And she just she just couldn't manage. She just couldn't cope with that because I just called her out on it because I could see straight through her behaviour. Do you know what I mean? So I feel way better now than I did do, but I've kind of almost got other people as friends now, if that makes sense. And they're a lot healthier people as well. So I guess it's all good. The only other thing I will say was two of her friends came to me completely off their own back, which I think this has helped me massively because when you do get gaslighted, it does have a big impact on your mental health. And I think there's even people that I chat to online that I've said, look, I can see that you've been traumatized. Please go and get help. And some will be, oh, right, yeah, okay, and they'll sort it. Then other people will just, completely block you and stuff. And it's like, well, I'm just trying to help you, mate. I've been there, done it, got the T-shirt. I'm just trying to help you. But again, you can. It's that old phrase, isn't it? You can take a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. So, same thing applies. But I do advocate. Like I'll talk to anybody if they're struggling, because I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to be isolated. I know what it feels like to be gaslighted and to just for somebody to challenge their own perceptions of reality is a very, very scary thing. I can't really describe what it feels like. It's like the worst feeling I've ever felt. It's not a very nice thing at all. So if I can help somebody, if I can talk someone round, you know what I mean, or help somebody. And I've done quite a lot of this because I have chatted to quite a lot of male victims, and they'll be genuinely surprised when I've said to them, "Look, you've been abused, mate." They're like, "What? Wow." They'll almost be like, and I'll have described these behaviours of toxic women to them, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, did you know her?" And it's like, "No, I don't, but I know the bad behaviours, and I've experienced the bad behaviours." But you can almost hear that connection, that like realization of, wow, and it's like, yeah, because I've experienced it, And again, it's not this is the thing when you asked before about how can we move it forward. The behaviours are the same. Doesn't matter if it's a man, a woman. I suppose we could train a robot to do these behaviours, but the behaviours are the same. They're anxious, they're controlling, attention seeking, or they're all the same behaviours. It's just different people that do it. It's as simple as that. It can be a man, it can be a woman. The behaviours are the same the world over. To say it's gendered, I think, that's obvious. That's just for fun, isn't it? But yeah, and I think this is the whole crux of the whole thing. Mental health doesn't discriminate. So it's obvious to me that, it's not a gendered thing. Anybody can have bad mental health. Click your fingers, get run over. Oof, you've got bad mental health. People who've seen it have got bad mental health. It's just life. It's a part of life, isn't it? Yeah.
And how do you feel talking about your experiences today?
Yeah, I'm all right with it, actually. I think it's because it just gets rid of the stigma. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure if people met me in person, they'd just be like shocked. They'd be like, "Oh my God, what? Wow, you've been abused?" It'd be like, "Yeah, I have," because I just look like a normal guy. Do you know what I mean? I just look like a typical guy. I don't think I'm anything special. I don't look a certain way. I don't, I'm no different from anybody else. And I think that's the key message for me is, doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, it can happen to anybody. So, but I think
that's the thing. I think that, there is no luck if somebody who's been abused.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Another thing
anybody.
Yeah, another thing I try to tell people as well is, and this is a big thing for me because I don't think people realise, because especially women, I think women get into the defensive. Oh my God, am I a female perp? And it's almost like that's a negative thing. But when you think about it for a long period of time, what you end up realising is none of this is unless you're a complete, total, antisocial psychopath, serial killer, right? Who I would imagine get pleasure from doing sick things. Unless you're one of those types of people, most of the trauma is probably not your fault. And that's what people, I don't think, realise. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like my trauma, for example, it's a direct result of probably my parents. And their trauma is probably a direct result of their childhoods and I know because I've talked to them about it. Do you know what I mean? And again, if you look at my ex, I've got no ill will towards her. I just wish she'd get some help. Yeah. And again, the trauma she's experienced is because of her mother. And it's like her mother's mother is probably responsible. So again, it's generational. It's not actually anybody's fault, but it's their responsibility to sort out. So it doesn't go forward. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's it. There shouldn't be any guilt or any of that sort of stuff. It's just, just be open. Just have a good hard look at yourself and just be open to it.
Well, I really appreciate you being open, and I really appreciate you talking to me today.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for listening to me rant on for what's it been? Ages.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I think the more people that speak out, the better it's going to be for male survivors of abuse.
Yeah, definitely.
And I hope there's many more people out there who will listen to this and listen to Nick that I spoke to last week and will come forward and speak out.
Yeah, I did hear that one. It was good. It was a good chat.
So thank you for your part in this.
Yeah, no worries. All right. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Steve is just one of hundreds of thousands of men a year in the UK alone that report domestic violence. A very small fraction of those reports actually result in prosecution. Male victims of abuse are not listened to. FTD Talk aims to correct that imbalance by providing a safe, non-judgmental platform from which to tell your story. I hope that many more men, such as Steve, will come forward to talk on the show and to give their stories. Together, we can beat this. No more silence. Thank you for listening. See you next week. Peace.
Nothing I could do is ever good enough for you.